Negotiations between the UK and the EU on separation of the members seem to have been stalled for months. And now, the EU side demands a breakaway deal before considering the negotiations on relations between the UK and EU for the future. On Thursday the 19th of October, the EU will hold its summit in Brussels. EU leaders, including members of the European Union, the 28, will be discussing a number of issues, but Brexit is believed to be the core issue to be discussed in the opportunity. The EU has had a lot of issues to discuss now, such as the policy for refugees, the crisis in the Caribbean, in Spain, issues of nuclear deal Iran and North Korea. But the immediate and most important case is that the Brexit case is stalled. Greater British people are more and more. Britain's Prime Minister, Teher Zemma, will try to take this opportunity to convince European leaders as well as the head of the government. The other 27 members began to consider the relationship between the UK and the EU in the future. In this sense, the British Prime Minister wants to expedite the Brexit case because it is making her government has been criticised by the majority of British nationals as working late. Talks on the 8th strike stay in the heist of a thunderstorm, noting that some Britons understand that they should not vote for Brexit. The assertions of politicians that coming out of the EU to Britain have improved, it is now a lie because of it, not as easy as it used to be. According to a British survey that thought Mrs. Teher Zemma's government was leading a bitter BREXIT in the month April, only 35%, but now up to 64%. People who think the UK should not leave the EU previously had 48%, but now up to 53%. So, Mrs. Teher Zemma tried to take the EU summit to give speeches on the talks. Then, that night, there will be an evening gathering, where it is believed that Theresa will try to convince the truck export each major European one party demanding a separation proceeding requires the other to negotiate future relations. Negotiations are inconceivable because both sides have different negotiating schedules. The EU is firmly determined that the UK and the EU must negotiate a separate deal before considering anything the other to the future. But the United Kingdom stubbornly wants the EU to consider an agreement on EU-English relations for the future. Exit permanently. In the EU's stance on the separatist deal, there are three most urgent cases that have been stalled, and the Union Europe accuses Britain of not moving at all. The first is money. We need to know that the British separation from the European Union is very complicated because it affects all sectors, regardless of the business environment. Financial, social, immigration, etc. These are the costs involved. The estimated cost of separation is estimated at between 50 and 60 billion euros. 20 billion euros. But the amount was considered by European leaders to be very low. The EU's principle is that Britain is a walker, so the UK has to pay for it, if not all must also be much more. A second set of issues is the Irish and Irish territories under British rule. In the UK, members of the European Union, Ireland and the Northern Ireland can freely go out. But when Britain comes out of the EU, that means there will be limits. At this point, it is affecting trade barriers between Ireland and the Northern Ireland Territory. So far, the UK has not asked for a specific solution. The third case of the deadlock is the issue of statute and the rights of European immigrants who live and work on British soil. There are about 3 million. They are in uncertainty after the UK is no longer a member of the European Union. The issue of residency and employment of the 3 million European immigrants has not yet been granted to the European Union. Also,